A group of Canadians were traveling by tour bus through Holland. As they stopped at a cheese farm, a young guide led them through a process of cheese making, explaining that goat's milk was used. She showed the group a lovely hillside where many goats were grazing. These, she explained, were the older goats put out to pasture when they no longer produced. She then asked, "What do you do in Canada with your old goats that aren't producing?" A spry old gentleman answered, "They send us on bus tours."
Steve and his buddies were hanging out and planning an upcoming fishing trip. Unfortunately, he had to tell them that he couldn't go this time because his wife wouldn't let him. After a lot of teasing and name-calling, Steve headed home frustrated. The following week, when Steve's buddies arrived at the lake to set up camp, they were shocked to see Steve. He was already sitting at the campground with a cold beer, swag rolled out, fishing rod in hand, and a campfire glowing. "How did you talk your missus into letting you go, Steve?" "I didn't have to," Steve replied. "Yesterday, when I left work, I went home and slumped down in my chair with a beer to drown my sorrows because I couldn't go fishing. Then my lady snuck up behind me and covered my eyes and said, 'Surprise!' When I peeled her hands back, she was standing there in a beautiful see-through negligee, and she said, 'Carry me into the bedroom, tie me to the bed, and you can do whatever you want.' So, here I am."
Joe and Bob were both fanatics about deep-sea fishing. Each would come back from fishing trips and tell the other big lies about the number and sizes of the fish they caught. So Bob comes back from his latest fishing trip and tells Joe, "You wouldn't believe, but in the Bahamas I caught a 500-pound herring." Joe says, "That's nothing. Last time I fished in the Bahamas, I pulled up an old lantern from a sunken American ship, and the candle was still burning." They both looked at each other, knowing that the other was lying. Finally, Joe said to Bob, "Look, Bob, if you take 450 pounds from off your herring, I'll blow out my candle."
"Little Johnny, come to my office right now." "Yes, sir." "Little Johnny, I saw you arguing with the customer that just left. I have told you before that the customer is always right. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir. The customer is always right." "So what were you arguing about with that customer?" "He said my boss is stupid and an idiot, sir." "That bastard! What did you say to him?" "I told him he's right."
Beverly, 90 years young, had played golf every single day since her retirement 25 years ago. But one evening she returned home looking unusually downcast. "That's it," she told her husband Gus. "I'm giving up golf. My eyesight has gotten so bad that once I hit the ball, I can't see where it goes." Gus, who was a remarkable 103 years old, made her a comforting cup of tea and said, "Why don't you take me along and give it one more try?" Beverly sighed. "That's no good," she replied. "You're 103. What help could you possibly be?" Gus straightened up proudly and said, "I may be 103, but my eyesight is perfect." The next day, Beverly reluctantly took Gus to the golf course. She teed up, took a powerful swing, and squinted down the fairway. Turning to Gus, she asked, "Did you see the ball?" "Of course I did," Gus replied confidently. "I told you, my eyesight is perfect." "Great," said Beverly, feeling a surge of hope. "So where did it go?" Gus paused for a moment, then scratched his head. "I don't remember." Two little boys go into the grocery store. One is 9, one is 4. The 9-year-old grabs a box of tampons from the shelf and carries it to the register for checkout. The cashier asks, "Oh, these must be for your mom, huh?" The 9-year-old replies, "Nope, not for my mom." Without thinking, the cashier responded, "Well, they must be for your sister then?" The 9-year-old quipped, "Nope, not for my sister either." The cashier had now become curious. "Oh, not for your mom and not for your sister. Who are they for?" The 9-year-old says, "They're for my 4-year-old little brother." The cashier is surprised. "Your 4-year-old little brother?" The 9-year-old explains, "Well, yeah, they say on TV if you wear one of these you can swim or ride a bike, and my little brother can't do either of them." A man was in an airplane and waiting for the men's room to be free. After half an hour, he asked a flight attendant if he could use the ladies' restroom. The woman said yes, but told him not to touch to the buttons on the wall. He then went in the cabin. On the wall next to him were 4 buttons. He couldn't resist and pressed on the first one. Water started spraying from the toilet, cleaning his ass. He was so amazed by that he pushed on the second button. Then it was hot air that came out of the toilet, drying his ass. Astonished by that cool technology, he pressed on the third button. Powder popped out, leaving his buttocks soft and smelling good. He finally looked at the last button. The letters ATR were inscribed on it. Without even asking himself what it meant, he pressed on it. The next thing he knew, he was in a hospital, surrounded by doctors and nurses. His waist were wrapped in a tissue, and there was blood everywhere. He looked at one of the doctors and asked him what happened. The doctor told him that he pressed on the ATR button. The man asked him what it stood for. The doctor answered, Automatic Tampon Remover. A man walked into a Walmart, and the greeter said, Automotive, aisle 15. The man asked, How did you know I was here to get oil? The greeter replied, That's my job. Another man walked in, and the greeter said, Sporting goods, aisle 28. The man asked, How did you know I wanted fishing supplies? The greeter replied, That's my job. A woman walked in, and the greeter said, Tampons, aisle 5. The woman said, No, I'm here for hemorrhoid medicine. The greeter said, Darn, I missed it by an inch. An older couple was cruising down the highway, enjoying their retirement freedom. Windows down, classic country playing, and just a tiny bit too much speed. The wife was behind the wheel, confident and chatty. The husband was riding shotgun, alternating between giving directions and dozing off. Suddenly, flashing lights appeared in the rearview mirror. Oh dear, the wife sighed, pulling over. What did I do? A police officer approached the window. Ma'am, do you know how fast you were going? The wife leaned closer. What was that? The officer raised his voice. Do you know how fast you were going? She turned to her husband. He wants to know how fast I was going. The husband shouted back, He says you were going 85. The officer frowned. May I see your license? The wife blinked. What did he say? Her husband answered, He wants to see your license. She handed it over. The officer looked at it and said, I see you're from Chicago. I spent some time there once. Worst experience of my life. I dated a woman there. Meanest, most stubborn person I've ever met. The wife turned to her husband. What did he say? The husband replied, He says he thinks he knows you.